My name is Andrzej Mikolajewski. I'm from the Krytyka Polityczna team, and I have a pleasure to moderate this short panel on Belarus. As most of us know, Belarus has gone through an enormous cycle of events within the last 3 years. First, the neglected pandemic that rose the visibility of independent media, to which the Belarusian turned in search of verified information. Then the forged elections of 2020 and mass protests with huge support from all around the world. Nevertheless, they were with the support of Russian hammered. Last year, 2021 is a year of continuous oppression. The independent media landscape totally vanished. The non-profit organizations were mostly destroyed, and the current situation is rather dire. So last year there was around 500 journalists jailed in Belarus. Right now it came down to if I recall the number correctly, 34, but those who were released were forced to exile or to stop operating or just to go underground. And I would like to start the panel with asking a question about how is the situation with these of the media and journalists in Belarus who stayed in the country, and what is the situation of there, what is going on. Just last remark, due to the ranking of freedom of press of Reporter Without Borders, the Belarus is right now ranked 153 among 180 countries in the world. So it's not a very a friendly or welcoming ground to do the journalist job. So my question is, what is the situation of journalists who stayed on the ground? And since we have a half an hour, I will try to maybe ask questions directly. So, Volha, can you start?
I would like to say one first thing that we should understand that your state, I mean Ukraine, is fighting for you, but our state is fighting against us, and it's important. And we know that after events of 2020 year, our state, our authorities set goal to destroy independent media, and now about 400 journalists left Belarus, and they are living in other countries, Ukraine, Poland, Lithuania, Georgia, and Germany, and they work. Also, in this moment, 32 media workers are behind bars, and they was accused for nothing, for their job, for their work. And if some people would like to cooperate, work with independent media, and would like to stay in Belarus, this is directly way to prison. And I don't have positive script for our future, but we understand that we should work and should do our job as well. Maybe that's all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. In addition, in the background, you can see the letters that are being sent by the jailed journalists. There's just a sample of, I guess, few hundred that were already digitalized.
Yeah, I will tell you about this a little bit later, because we thought we're gonna save the planet, save the Belarusians with a project which is ongoing. But it's not only. These letters are mainly from the journalists to their families, but you can also say that some of the journalists behind the bars are sending their coordinations to their news outlets, you know, who to interview, what to do, and how to operate. As I understand, there's no free independent news outlet now operating in Belarus. All of the titles, sometimes they change their names, like Tutbaj or Bielpan, which was an independent news agency operating, or under another name, or they are not operating as well. So this is very important to say, and maybe the conscious about this, that there are no free journalists in Belarus, just maybe in the regions there's some left, but really like dozens, is very important to underline. And when I have a voice, it's my coming out actually as a expert or underground activist for 20 years for Belarus in different manners. So just recently I've been passed the heritage of Inicjatywa Wolna Białorus. It was passed to me as I was always operating informally. That's why I support guys. I'm a Polish journalist still, making many projects, but this one is totally voluntary because Belarusian medias have really difficulties. They struggle to survive. And I hope you're going to tell us about this, that they're kind of forgotten. And just for the last word this time, you know, today, Tatiana Tichanowskaya, she said on another journalistic meeting in Vilnius that strong democracy cannot be built without independent media. And for now, those medias are really in a big trouble, struggling to survive.
Aksana, would you like to add something to the image of the media that state in the Belarus? We know that the state is putting enormous effort to actually fill the void that they made, and they investing into building like regime-controlled media, which also started to be really active in the internet. They rose to significant visibility. Half of the media consumption in Belarus comes from the TV, and TV is totally controlled by the Lukashenko-led regime. So I guess the information zone in Belarus and what Belarusian actually, their access to the independent news is rather limited, and it's being supplied mostly by the media who choose exile, who work and operate from abroad, and we will come to that in a moment. But nevertheless, is there anything to add about the situation on the ground right there in Belarus now?
I can add only one thing, that repressions continues. For example, a few days ago, one of my colleagues, Maxim Khlebec, was detained for 7 days for absolutely crazy reason. He was detained because of under the video with white, red, white flag posted in Vkontakte a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, and forgotten already. But we recognize this detention as an intimidation act, and he was clearly given to understand that his journalistic work is not really welcomed in Belarus now, and actually, in fact, independent journalism is criminalized in Belarus. That's the reason why we have to be really accurate, because we have hostages, our colleagues in prison, and we have our colleagues in Belarus inside the country who are under the risk of persecution at every moment. So now we have to fight for those who are in prison, and have to fight for the right of our people to have an access for truthful information. And that's the drama.
Yeah, it's a criminal offense to like a post or be a follower of a number of independent medias. Just if you are observing them over Facebook or elsewhere, you are now a criminal in Belarus in some sense. So that's a huge.
They're regarded as extremists, all the
Yeah.
people, the readers and the journalists. So these people here are regarded as extremists to the government of Lukashenko.
Yeah, this is a terrorist panel.
Exactly.
Actually. Okay, so let's move forward because situation is dire, but the Belarusians are not stopping. They struggle for independence and they struggle to fight for the independent media as well, which is, as Tikhanovskaya said, a significant part of like a free nation, and it cannot be one without other. So most of the journalists who could moved elsewhere and operating from Poland and Lithuania, other countries. So what is their situation now? I would like to ask about the current role of the independent media. How are you reaching your audience? How are you sourcing your information? What are the prospects? And then would like to talk a little about the future, because many thought that this situation is really temporal, like that the Lukashenko regime will collapse soon. And obviously, paradoxically, with the war on Ukraine, it may happen sooner than later if the Russia fail eventually. But at the moment, it looks for many as, for example, situation in Poland in 82 or 83 during the war state, like we waited for 8 more years until truly independence were gained. So that might be the story of independent media of Belarus in exile. So what are the moods? How are you reaching your audience? Anton, maybe you can start.
Well, it's a hard question. Obviously, as it was, as we already told, it's not only that the media production is made criminal by the criminal regime, but it's also the media consumption. So people who are just for sending messages to one another containing the link to a certain media which is viewed as extremist by the regime, they can get prison terms, and usually these prison terms are, in any other country that would equal to torture, pretty much the conditions in which people are sitting. So it's serious. Serious things. How do media work with sources? Obviously, you cannot do any reporting. You cannot take a microphone out on the street on Belarus and just go and film and ask people what's going on. Nevertheless, the media who are in exile now, there are many experienced journalists who are used to working in very tough conditions. And obviously they have certain contacts from, say, past life, right? Nevertheless, I wouldn't go into the details as to how exactly they source the information, because, I mean, we're talking about a totalitarian regime. So that's how it looks like, yeah.
Okay.
And at this point, we face such a problem like protecting our sources, because people who send, for example, photos of moving Russian vehicles throughout Belarus can be detained and can be accused by criminal case. Or, for example, we expect that one of our military experts, Yegor Lebedok, will be accused and sentenced for a few years because of interview given to an so-called extremist media. So that's the problem. Our sources wish to be anonymous, and there is another problem with the verification of the information. So,
and in results, now we are living and working in conditions when authors and heroes and experts, they are anonymous. You can read.
Yes, or another option would be to say as you know, you have a media who's viewed as extremist, but you can have a certain block, which might be or might not be related to a certain media, and then this media takes, you know, just copies this interview from the block. But does it protect the source? I mean, 100%. Well, I mean, Belarus is a country where it was said once that you know, sometimes times are like this, that we don't follow the law. You don't need to follow the law. So the law is obsolete. So who can or cannot be arrested is a big question. And I mean, but Belarusian media try to do their best to protect the sources, obviously, and this is a big issue.
Okay, I understand from our talk outside of the panel that discussing the financing of the Belarusian media is also a rather sensitive question, due also to possible repercussions on the ground and to the donors, also the individual donors in Belarus. So I will skip this little part, but I would like to ask you about your vision for the future, because as I said, this might be not temporary, this might take years. So my question is, how do you envision the future of independent media right now? How would you like to develop? Are there any fresh blood? That's a question also from my colleague, Sasha Gubskaya, who couldn't come, but she asked me to ask you, what are the mechanisms to bring new journalists to the field, to maintain your effort? Because like it's right now we see rather a movement in different direction, that people are stopped, no longer reporting, there are less journalists. And what do you do to actually maintain and develop, if you can relate to that?
Well, before we speak about the future, I think the important part here would be to underline that the Belarusian independent media survived, and that's a very big step, because you know, I mean, it couldn't have happened.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was that obvious.
It wasn't that obvious, you know. Regarding the fresh blood, of course, I think this is a problem for all, you know, the journalists, for all the media, whenever they are, but more so for Belarusians. Of course, you know, the Belarusian media cannot attract new blood with, you know, huge salaries. However, I think that being a Belarusian journalist right now is quite prestigious. And and beside that, there are certain young people who are guided by certain values, and especially so after 2020 in Belarus. And Belarusian media can attract new blood outside of the country in that manner. Because there are a lot of Belarusian students studying abroad as well. So that can be, there is an option there, there's a possibility there.
Okay, and are you prepared for example, spending next 5 to 10 years in exile, working as a journalist? Do you think that's viable? Sorry for tough questions, but I guess right. That's why we run a panel.
I mean, the situation is what it is. I mean, we should be prepared. Yeah, I mean, we thought a year or a year and a half ago that it wouldn't last long, but now we have to adapt for uncertainty, including. It's quite possible that we need to look into the cases of, say, Syrian journalists working from exile, or Afghani journalists working from exile.
All right, thank you.
I guess now we have important task to save our editorial offices and to save people in our profession, because I don't know who would like to be journalist in such conditions. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And if I can add
yes,
something
please.
from the perspective of an observer, but someone who is also friends with lots of Belarusian medias operating in Poland, I think that the lack of sustainability it's a big challenge, and of course financing. This is one of the biggest problems they face. So there will be no future if they won't be financing the Belarusian journalists, the Belarusian projects. And I remember when I was working at Gazeta Wyborcza, and it was before 2020, and I was looking at Kuku, 43, MAG. I remember I was such a great projects, so fresh, innovative. It was amazing. We're looking at them with envy, that they can do it, because Belarus is known for very good technical people, the people who create websites and designers. They are all in Poland and now, or in Georgia or in Germany, but I think we can estimate 50,000 Belarusian people are now in Warsaw only, I think. And we have to use this opportunity and to exchange again knowledge, exchange expertise on so many things. So I see it as a good point to build a new wonderful media, even better than it was before. But this rebranding problem, they worked a lot, Tutbay worked a lot for their brand, and now they have to be something different, If there will be no support for such media, if they have to rebrand and they have to change all the project because of the donors or something, that's a big problem.
Yeah, so this is a call to the representatives of the donor granting organizations, foundation, etc. Don't forget about Belarus. Obviously, our focus of most of the organizations is now on Ukraine, but there is a Belarus to support. To as many point out, there will be no independent Ukraine without independent Belarus, and vice versa. So please keep it in mind. And regarding Ukraine and regarding war, I would like to go further. So, if you can maybe relate to how the independent or in general the Belarusian media are reporting on the war. What do we know about the Belarusian attitudes toward the war in Ukraine, Ukrainians right now? Can you maybe elaborate on that? I know Edyta has one slide on that right here, but we can jump to it later. First, I would like to ask this question to our Belarusian colleagues.
So, reporting about the war. How do Belarusian independent media report about the war? We have, I think, 2 Belarusian journalists who are working in Ukraine.
Even more.
Full-time, more than that? How many do we have?
I don't know exactly, but more than 2.
Okay.
But not more than 5,
I think
probably.
sometimes we have these questions as to why do Belarusian journalists not work in Ukraine, why there are not more of them. Well, there is a simple fact that the representatives of the Ukrainian state treat Belarusian citizens right now as the citizens of a country which is a co-aggressor, which makes it a lot more difficult to report from the Ukrainian side. And actually, the reporters I was talking about, they work for Belsat, and Belsat is part of TVP, so they can have Polish accreditation
National
documents,
Polish TV.
which is a massive benefit for it, because there is a complete different treatment of right now Belarusians and Poles. We also have some volunteers, or some Belarusian volunteers who volunteer from day one in Ukraine, but at the same time they have a hard time to legalize. They receive a special treatment. They receive special
regiment,
treatment.
right?
Was that?
The famous regiment of Kalinowski, right?
But not only. I'm talking more about volunteers who rather help help the ZSU rather than fight in the ZSU. But yeah.
All right.
Also, we have freelancers in Ukraine, and they write article for our media. And
can you please move closer to the microphone?
Also, we know that psychologist research said that people who read independent media, they support Ukraine, and other side, people who watch and read our state media and Russian media, they support Russian war.
So we can say that the society is divided in half when it comes to attitudes toward the war?
I wouldn't. No, I would say the more Belarusians don't support the war than the supporters, and the opposite. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we didn't have so huge propaganda as Russia, and also we live near the Ukraine, and a lot of our people was in Ukraine or rest in Ukraine, in Zatoka or Odessa, and we know and understand these people, and I guess it's important fact.
And also, Belarusian independent media now focusing on debunking Kremlin narratives. Yes, some of them don't have reporters inside Ukraine, but we can debunk Russian propaganda.
I have to say that we will not find many supporters of the Russian aggression against Ukraine in those who read independent media, and that's a very important point I want to make here.
Yeah, that you are doing an enormous and a great job in actually maintaining the right stance. So we have a short slide with a data about the attitudes, how people regard the Belarusians in regard to war. Edyta, can you present it?
Yes, I was presenting before some of the slides of this big comparative research we made in 6 countries, and we also ask how you can read here what the people think in these countries about what should citizens of Belarus, how they responsible they are, you know. And as you can see here, which is a very important input for Belarusian media, people generally think that the Belarusian society, their citizens are responsible for what's happening within Ukraine. But that is probably because this is the data, and my comment is that this is probably because of the lack of information, that people are not aware enough of what's happening in Belarus within the media, within the independent media, and especially that the journalists are in prison. So I know Jakub wants to finish very soon this panel, and I'm talking twice, but that's why I have a great
discrete signals.
Yes. So Jakub, no, 2 minutes more. I just want to share with you a great story and great project I'm working on. I hope it will come, and I'm very happy to be at Mixer and connect to the Belarusians. Thank you, Mixer, for that. And I also connect to other people who are dealing with Belarus. So I'm doing this fan page, Inicjatywa Wolna Białorus, and there's one day I see the message. It's Adam Sierociński. You don't see it probably, but he's a great creative director from Saatchi & Saatchi, Havas, and different advertising company. And he's like, "Oh, would you mind meeting with me, because I have something in mind with Belarus, and you might be the right person." I'm like, "Okay, but are you connected to Belarus? Like, who are you?" We always like checking if there are spies or someone connecting to you. And now it turns out it's a real guy. We went for a coffee, and he really does this amazing job, like social campaigns. And he was he's Polish, never like had anything to do with Belarus, but he was so touched by the stories of the journalists who are in prison and generally the situation. He started to read, and he couldn't find many information. That's why he came to me and Adela from Sojka. It's another independent media working in Poland. And he said, "I want to do letters of freedom. I want to spread this project to China. Even I want to have it in the porno magazine." I was like, okay. But you know, he's crazy, but I like crazy projects, and I like people who have great vision. So the idea is that you saw the letters. We collected the handwriting of the imprisoned people, or also the journalists who were in prison and they were let out, because the prisons in Belarus, they have their capacities, you know, so you cannot close to the prison the whole nation, fortunately. There's a professor from Polish Art Academy, and he's gonna design a font based on handwriting of the imprisoned or people who were detained, the journalists, and we would like to share it with other medias around the world, this digital font, so they can write even once or more if they want, but once a year about situation in Belarus with this font. We're also going to do the viral video about those people who are imprisoned, or the people we can reach in Poland who will agree to talk, because this is also very sensitive. I see it. I finish. I see they're talking very silent, and I see like the regime in their souls here, you know, because it's a really difficult situation. So to sum up, I think that promoting this information, that there are so many great journalists in prison but still working through the letters, and they are still fighting there in Belarus for independent media, for freedom of speech, for no censorship in their country is very important. So if you would be interested to join us, Letters of Freedom, please reach me out, and thank you.
Yeah, this is a very interesting project. So I know we need to end, but last short question. What we can do to support the independent Belarusian media now and the future? What can be done? What would you suggest to the public?
Well, we need long-time support programs for the Belarusian media. This is number one. Number two, which is not that obvious, I would say, is that we need help in talking to the global tech programs. Because when we talk about the Belarusian media, how they approach their audience is obviously we talk about online. All the television and radio, we cannot use this means. We talk about online. There is a situation because the independent media in Belarus are being blocked. So, for example, you try to say advertise some piece of news on Belarus using Facebook. You set a specific link for that, you know, which is not the link of the website because it's been already blocked. So this link is already being downgraded by Facebook automatically. So it's not only, I mean, I said Facebook, it's not only Facebook. I mean, there is we have some research on that. I mean, we need the support of the big tech and to explain the situation with access to the Belarusian independent media. And I mean, I just don't have enough time. I can talk more.
To elaborate, yeah. That's
and I wish to add.
Yes, please.
We really need it, and we really appreciate your journalistic solidarity in any form. Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Volha, would you like to add something?
I agree. And one moment. I guess it will be good when our colleague will take information about Belarus and without joke. I'm so sorry, but sometimes I read in Ukrainian media. Картофельный Führer, I don't know, potato Führer, and but it's not funny because Lukashenko is not joke. It's not funny. He has powerful and he has Gubopik police and our forces to fight with our society, and I guess it will be good when our colleague will write about Belarus without joke, and no.
Yeah, I think it's understandable, and let's treat it seriously. So I ask you for a round of applause for our brave guests. Thank you.